Well, let's do this again. Okay, this is going to be take 2 or like 2.5 because I can't seem to get my technology right today. But if you tuned into the other live, this is basically the same information. The problem is that I was not sharing my screen the last time. So I screwed that up, and now I'm going to share my screen so you can actually see what I'm talking about, and we'll try and cover this. The second time is always a little bit better anyhow. So anyhow, we're talking about November 744 Zulu, which was lost on Friday evening. Had pilot Clinton Devin, who is an orthopedic surgeon in Steamboat Springs, and he also traveled to our area of Wyoming, Cody Powell, and did orthopedic surgery up there. My wife woke me when I woke up this morning. My wife said, "Hey, can you look this plane up?" Because it was lost. She worked for an orthopedic surgeon, knew of the guy, and wanted to know what happened. So I was able to pull up the information and quickly kind of determine what the most likely probable cause of the accident was. Granted, I'm not an investigator. This is just for the people that know Dr. Devin and kind of want to understand what happened. This is going to be a brief summary of kind of what went wrong, or the most likely cause of what went wrong in this particular situation. So November 744 Zulu was, I'll share my screen and show you, Piper Meridian PA 46 turboprop. So very, very capable plane. Share, do that. Give me just a second. We'll bring it up so you can see it. And it'll probably work better if we use that. So this is a Piper PA 46, 500 TP, which is turboprop. So very capable plane, very nice plane, very fast plane. And that's why he used it. I think the total flight time was just over an hour from Cody to Steamboat Springs. In my plane, that would take me probably 2 hours. I'm about half as fast on a good day. Maybe even less than that. It might even take me 2.5 hours to get there. So very, very quick, capable plane. This is the plane of my dreams, honestly. 6-seater. So pilot, co-pilot, and then 4 in the back. We'll show you the inside. And I was glad I was able to find this because it shows me what kind of avionics he has, which this is the avionics package. Very, very nice avionics package. High tech, synthetic vision. So you can see this screen right here. This is going to allow him synthetic vision. So he's got full situational awareness. On this screen, he can load an approach plate. This is radar. So this has things that my plane doesn't have. Probably has a much better autopilot than mine does. So it'll basically fly the approach for him almost completely. As long as he controls his power and everything like that, it'll descend and stay on glide path and do all that stuff. Mine won't do that. I have to help control that through pitch and throttle. But very, very, very capable plane. Dr. Devin, here you can see instrument single engine land, instrument airplane. Received his, I'm guessing this is an instrument date. I don't know. I can't remember that for certain, but I think this is the date that he received his instrument. So about 14 months ago, received his instrument rating. And I remember seeing this plane fly in and out of Cody, registered to Cowboy Air. I don't know if it was a shared plane or not. We could look that up if we wanted to, but it's really not important for the discussion. So this is at the very least has not been flying IFR for much more than a year. I think that date changes when you add the 92320. I think that date changes when you add rating. So he's probably been flying longer than that, but I don't know when he received his actual private pilot. So yeah, I'll have to look that up. I'm really curious. I think that's the date of his instrument. Maybe somebody can correct me in the comments down below because I would be curious. But I think that date changes. And obviously, we don't have any way of knowing how many hours he has. This is Dr. Devin. Yeah, there's more information on this accident on Catherine's report. They give a little information about him and what he did and how he served. And so important to note is that on the meteorological conditions were wind 240 at 9 knots or 260 at 5 knots. So he's probably going to land runway, be straight in for runway 32 would be the most likely and best runway for his landing. Overcast 1400 or overcast 1200. I don't know. I can't remember how many. I don't remember how many hours it is for Wyoming. I'm struggling here, and that's partly because I haven't been flying. So if it's 6 hours off of Zulu time or not. So, but at any rate, so looked up what time sunset was. So on that night, right now we're sunset's about 4:36, twilight's about 5:10. So this is definitely going to be considered a night flight. Very high terrain. You can see, we'll pull up the plate here, whichever one that is, right here. And you can see this is all the terrain. So terrain around there, this is the runway right here, right where that dotted line comes back around. This is the runway. I wish I had a highlighter for my mouse. Runway right here. And this is going to be what the pattern looks like. He's going to come around here and then line up for runway 32 and land on runway 32. So you can see all the high terrain. Looks like the highest terrain is about 10.8, but there are some lower terrains, 8,700 feet, 8,900 feet, and most importantly, right here we have some terrain at 8,350, 8,360 roughly. So all these are going to come into play. So the flight path for this looks like this. So that's flight path from Cody to Steamboat Springs. And we'll replay that. We'll get it to where it matters. As you can see, I mean, he's cruising along here. We got almost 400 miles an hour. So that thing's, it's a crazy fast plane. So it starts the descent right here, starts to slow down, get the speed under control, makes the turn. And this is the first turn at the initial approach fix. So this is going to be the fix right here, Habro. Is going to be our fix. So he's going to turn there and start the approach, which this is the RNAV GPS E. Important to note is that when you get ready to do this, and probably, like well before he ever reaches this, he should, we usually brief these things because we know what the conditions are. We're watching, we have onboard weather and all these things. We have pretty good knowledge that we're going to have to do an approach. And so I would be briefing this well on the way, have this up on my screen. And so the briefing looks like this. You kind of read it down, airport elevation. We're going to be paying attention to this stuff. We have, So we have minimums for our climb gradients and all of this. And I can't remember what I would have to look there again. I haven't been flying and haven't been IFR for almost a year, so I'm a little bit rusty on this. This means something. And I think this has to do with takeoff minimums, or your climb gradient minimums. But anyhow, we read this and we look at our missed approach. It says climbing left turn to 11.3 direct Habro and hold. So if he doesn't make his approach, he's going to fly this. He's going to come in here. He's going to turn this corner. And if for some reason along here he gets out of whack, or anywhere along here gets out of whack, he's going to fly to the end of the runway. And what happens is sometimes we can get off to the left or the right. And once we come out of, once we go off so far, we're not supposed to try and save it. We're just supposed to execute a missed approach and get that guy out of there. Same thing is if we are not on glide path, we're not on a stable approach, then we're supposed to execute a missed approach, climb, go to our point, and then turn and follow the missed approach procedure. And in that case, that would mean at the end of the runway, if anywhere along this line from Pexa to the end of the runway, we get off of our course, then we're just going to fly straight ahead. We're going to continue straight ahead to the end of the runway. And at the end of the runway, we're going to make that turn, that climbing left turn to 11.3. which is our altitude. We climb back up to 11.3 and head directly back to our initial approach fix, which is right here at Habro. So he's going to come in here. This is Habro right here. Oh, and I forgot to slow it down. So we'll come in here. Habro here, he comes in, he turns, starts slowing down, starts descending. He's at 12.3, 11.8, 11.4. Let's see what just so you guys understand a little bit about these approach plates. So 11.3 is our altitude that we want to be at. So as soon as we cross this, we can descend down to 11.3. And he was probably assigned a crossing altitude by air traffic control. But from this point, from Habro to Mabke, he needs to be 11.3. And this shows him at 11.4. So we know that the GPS altitude that this is spitting out is roughly the same as what his altitude is reading in his plane. There can be differences there, so just understand that what we're seeing on the screen may be just slightly different. So he crosses, now he's descending down, and he's getting down to his 11.3. So there's 11.3, which is exactly what he's supposed to be at. And he can't start descending down to 11.3 until he crosses that point. So just be aware of that. Then he comes in here, turns the corner. And right here, so for the first part, I think he can descend down to 10.3. So as soon as he turns the corner, he can descend to 10.3. Right there's 10.3. And then after he crosses Boosty, he can descend down to 9,700 feet. So here he's going to be at about 9,800 feet, 96. So he actually starts getting a little bit low, perhaps. We can't be 100% certain, but that maybe looks a little low, like he descended a little bit. And right after that turn, we're already getting readings of 9,100 feet. And after the turn here, we know that he can descend down to 8740. So he can descend down to 8740 until Waycore, which is right here. At Waycore, he can descend down to his MDA, minimum decision altitude. So then he's pretty much lined up. Everything's looking good. Descends down to 8,300 feet. And this is where I think things kind of started to fall apart right here. I think, oh, geez, this thing's going to reload and make me. Right here, we're going to have a problem. So 8,300 feet right here. And 8740. So we've been pretty consistent between his altitude and the GPS altitude read off from flight tracking or from FlightAware right up until this point. Now all of a sudden he's low. And I think he may have gotten a little bit low, maybe fell below his glide path, and maybe that's what caused the problem. So, oh no, we've got to do something. And then we'll see him make a turn here. So he initiates a turn, which would indicate that maybe he's going missed. But as he's turning, he's also descending. So we go from 86 to 84 to 83, then we move to 82, 81, 8,000, 7,900. So we're turning. Then we start climbing. And that's when radar contact is lost. Oops. Radar contact's lost right there, and approximately 612. So there's two possibilities here, and one is that he executed a missed approach on this approach, and it looks like right about here at Waycore is where the missed approach was executed. Now, if you're going to execute a missed approach, you need to fly straight ahead to the end of the runway, then turn and follow this dotted line. Basically, and it may not look exactly like that, but you have to go to the end of the runway before you start executing your turn. And if he did a missed approach and was turning because of the missed approach. He executed his missed approach too soon. And the reason that was fatal in this case is because, as you saw, he was 7,900 feet, started climbing, reached about 8,100 feet, 8,000 to 8,100 feet, and turned right into this mountain right here, right off to the side of Waycor, this fix here. And I think he got to like 8,100 feet is what I saw. If I slowed that down just a little bit. Yeah, 8,100 feet. So blocked about 150 feet of clearing that mountain. Oh no, 250 feet roughly, depending on how far GPS altitude's off. So about 250 feet off of clearing this mountain right here. But whereas if he would have flown straight to the end of the runway and then turned, he would have made it clear and had plenty of time to climb and make it right over the top of that. But at no point was he supposed to be as low as 7,900 feet, which is what I saw right there. You can see he's 105 miles an hour and he's 7,900 feet. And based on, I don't think our GPS altitude is that far off based on some of the other things I'm seeing. And we can see that because here is our minimum altitude right here, 8,140. So he never should have fallen below that. Like I say, that could be just a little bit off, so that we don't know exactly what altitude was reading out in the plane. But the other problem is that if he's a category, depending on what category he is, he needed to have a 1.25 mile visibility. And based on Catherine's report, the METAR for then, we only had 1 statute mile. So the visibility wasn't good enough for this approach regardless, to be able to make this approach into Steamboat Springs at night. And this is a great time to choose an alternate airport and not try that. So in the aviation industry, it's widely known that we have certain risks that we take. We fly over mountainous terrain, which is risky because there's no place to land. We can fly at night, which is risky because it's tough to see the mountains and avoid them. If you've ever been in a plane at night, it's very, very spooky to be out in the middle of nowhere. Some places in Wyoming, Colorado, like outside of Steamboat Springs, I can imagine it's the same place with no moon or something like that. It is eerily dark. So not being able to see exactly where stuff is until you're right there is a very real possibility. And that IFR, which is instrument meteorological conditions, meaning clouds, we're flying in the clouds. So they say pick one, and this is a flight that was conducted using all three: mountainous terrain, at night, in IMC, and it cost this pilot his life. So be very careful about all the risks you're taking on. We have to mitigate as much risk as we possibly can. And if you're going to do those things, maybe think about a co-pilot. Just even adding a co-pilot or another set of eyes to something can drastically reduce the risk, which is why airlines fly with 2 pilots. One pilot flying, one pilot monitoring, making sure everything looks good, and speaking up if something doesn't look good. Had he had another pilot next to him, that does mitigate some of the risk, and he could say, okay, yeah, I've got somebody else sitting next to me that's also watching, so I don't make a turn too soon. The other possibility is that he got too low, went to initiate the missed approach, and when you go full throttle and you start to climb or start to descend, it can give you weird feelings inside your ear, and you might get disoriented. And he might have started that turn inadvertently, and just got sideways, thinking that he was flying straight to level and started ignoring what his instruments were telling him. So there is the very real possibility that sudden thrust of power, plus initiating a climb or being in a descent, all of a sudden could have given him the illusion that he was turning when he wasn't, and turning when he wasn't. And so then he turned and made himself turn and caused that, and just lost situational awareness of what was going on. Bottom line is the plane was more than capable of it. That plane should have flown that entire approach basically on its own with very little help from him. Just kind of managing some altitude. It's obviously not going to fly a glide slope because there wasn't a glide slope on this, but he can help it descend, and it's going to stay on the course and do all that stuff. So doesn't get much more capable than that. But if you're hand flying and you take over, then all those features aren't available to you. So Very tragic loss for him and for his wife, and says he has 2 sons. So that's very tragic. But be careful if you're a pilot and you're watching this. Be careful about the risks that you accept, because it's just this can be the result. And we have to be very careful about this. Know your plates, brief your plates well before you ever get into that situation, because when you're there, time passes very fast, and that's what we call task saturation and overload. We just get task saturated, and we can miss one thing, like the hill off to our right side. And as a pilot flying in and out of there, he knew everything that was going on there. And maybe that's one of the reasons that he didn't brief his plate as well as he should have, is because he was complacent. It's like, hey, I've done this a million times. It's not a big deal. I'll just bomb right in there and it'll all be good. Anybody that's flown into Cody knows we have kind of a similar situation. We've got the McCullough Peaks right off the end of runway 4, and if you decide you want to mess up and do something there, you could end up into the peaks. You've got the mountains for the canyon off to one side. If you're taking off a runway 22 and just don't do your turns right, I mean, we have high terrain as well, not quite as bad as this, but that terrain is a real factor. But even at that, his plane was probably trying to warn him that there was terrain in the area and to try and avoid it. So, because it's one thing we have on those very fancy displays that he has in there, we can actually bring up terrain maps and see where the terrain is. And he was probably getting audible alerts right before he crashed, letting him know that he was too low and there was terrain ahead. And at that point, he's probably trying to figure out what's gone wrong, because there's not supposed to be. I'm supposed to be making a turn. This should all be good. So, so I've got a comment here from John. Says, I've superimposed the approach plate over the flight-aware flight path, and it was dead nuts on course until he made the left turn right into the terrain. Yeah, so just that's what it looks like. It looks like you initiated the turn way too soon, and that's what caused the accident. So should not have initiated that turn until he had crossed the end of the runway. So if somebody's watching this and remembers what those I guess I'm just lazy. I could go look them up, but I just need to, when I start getting into flying again, hopefully I'm about a week away from getting my plane. We've got landing gear that just won't come up or go down. So it's building pressure, and the pressure is bleeding off somewhere. But if somebody can remind me what the T and the A and this, I know that below 26 degrees, it could be verify altimeter settings. So that's not one I forgot, but the T and the A on these charts, I'm struggling to remember what those are about, but I think that has to do with climb rate. So, and then if somebody wants to chime in and let me know, if you fly up one of these planes and you know what the approach speeds are, it looks like approach speeds right around 100 miles an hour. It seems slow to me because my plane has approach speed of about 100. So, but maybe that's the case. They've got really efficient wings, and they tend to glide pretty well. So maybe that is the approach speed for one of these. Just seemed a little bit slow to me. I would have thought he would have had a little faster approach speed than that. What else did I want to know? Yeah, so if you fly one of these planes and you want to drop a comment, let me know. So Piper Malibu, Matrix, very, very capable plane. I'm very jealous. It's always been the plane I've wanted. If I was going to go out there and buy a plane tomorrow and I had unlimited funds, that'd probably be the one I'd shoot for. So, well, unless I had enough money for a TBM or something. I mean, ultimately, I applaud us. But so anyhow, tragic loss of life that didn't need to happen, just too much risk, and be careful about the risk you take on. And until next time, you have a good dang day and fly safe.